Kyle with DIY Garage Door Parts, and we're going to do an installation video on the Sommer Synoris 550 model. This is made for a 550-pound garage door, is the max capacity for it. This is going to be the finished product. In this is the motor head, and your lights are here. The motor actually travels up and down the track. And what we're going to be taking out is the old Chamberlain opener that doesn't have photo eyes. Okay, so to assemble the Sommer opener, this is the tools that we're going to need to start assembly. First, you're going to need a 9/16 wrench, a 1/2-inch wrench. You'll need a Phillips bit. You can use a screwdriver, or you can use one for your drill or impact. Also, 9/16 socket, 7/16 socket, 3/8 socket, and a 1/2-inch socket, and then you'll need a flathead screwdriver, and then you need either an impact or a drill. Either one is fine. Set your rail out, and then also you'll need the motor head. The motor head, make sure that this sprocket will free spin. Right now it won't, so you'll have to pull the cord, and then now it free spins. So that's the way you want it set, so you can slide it on the rail and the chain. You also need a 3/8 socket on your drill or impact, and your rail will come out of the box just like this. There'll be the splice, and then you've got your two pieces. Okay, so this is how the rail comes in the box. The two rails are side by side, and your splice plate is over top of them. So you'll just set that out. First thing you'll do is loosen. These are your up and down limit switches that cut the motor on and off. You can go ahead and loosen these. They're a little stiff the first few times you adjust them, so you're going to loosen those. Because the chain in here is doubled over, you're going to have to remove this one, get it out of the way so that the chain, you can open it up. And then you will slide your stop back on. If you want, you can just go ahead and snug it up, just so it doesn't move around on you. But you can tell which end of the rail is where the typically the motor head would go. It's going to have this contact, black rectangle with a metal contact. And so the first thing you're going to do is make sure that the chain is secure in there. And then you're going to take your 3/8 bit, and you're going to there's a nut on here. You're going to loosen it up as almost all the way, and you'll see this piece is getting longer, and it's going to allow you to hook the chain on both ends. So we're going to go down here and put your splice plate on there, and go ahead and get this one connected up. And there's an indentation here. You can see where it stops. The other rail is going to slide in here too, but we first got to get the motor head on. So the way you can tell that the chain is correct, there's a smooth side, and then there's a groove side with the groove. The groove goes towards the rail, so you want to see the smooth side. So make sure it goes through the stop. And there's a little groove in here that the chain, you turn it sideways, the chain link, and then it twists, and when it twists, it secures it in place. You just watched, you saw that the chain liked to slip out of the retainer. So the best thing to do is use a set of vice grips, and you can vice grip it up against the rail. Don't vice grip it too tight, but just enough to hold it so while you're assembling the rest of the rail. Now that you have the motor, it's going to free spin. Since this is the part, this rail that we just were working on is the one that is typically where the motor head is, where you plug it up into the outlet and that sort of thing. We want to make sure that the motor head, this is where the arm attaches, this is going to be towards the door. So we're going to want to make sure this is going towards the door. So when we line this up, we got to go all the way down here to the other end. And you're going to take, now you're going to take this and thread it through on the side of the sprocket. So let me show you. You're going to turn it on its side, and you'll see that sprocket free spin. And it's going through, the chain's sliding through there. You're going to do that the whole way down the rail. And then you're going to turn it over and slide it into the rail. Then you'll take your other rail, and you need to loosen this bolt too on this end. It's also 3/8. You're going to loosen it almost all the way also. You're going to lay the chain in there, and you're going to use that splice plate to connect it. Okay, so you'll go to the other end, and you'll take the chain link. Now that you've got this piece loosened up, you're going to slide it in just like you did the other end, and then twist it, give it a quarter twist, and then you'll get your drill or impact, and you'll start tightening this up. And where you're going to stop, you'll see right here there's an arrow, and then on the underneath of this bolt that we're tightening down, there's a washer. You're going to stop when it's to that arrow. And then you'll go back down to this other end. You'll take your vice grips off, and you'll tighten this side to that same washer. And go ahead and snug up your stops just a little bit so they don't get in your way. Okay, this opener is made for a 7-foot and 8-foot door. The only problem we found on an 8-foot door is that it won't open up. It'll lack maybe 4, 5, 6 inches from opening all the way. But we found a trick to get around that. These stops here for your opening and closing limit switches, what they do is this little plunger here, it actually hits a relay switch in the motor. So what you can do is you can cut those off, but you need to make sure that you don't cut them too short. So what we're going to do is we're going to slide it down, and you will hear it trip the relay switch when we pushed it in far enough. Right there. So we can actually pull this out with your finger on it and mark it. So you at least need that much travel to actually trip the switch. So we can actually cut this off, and that's going to give us probably another 4 or 5 inches of travel when we cut the other one off also. We're going to take a set of vice grips, and I've got that marked when it hit the relay, and I'm going to go ahead and cut it with the set of vice grips. It'll just snap off, and you can go and test it before you put it all back together. Put it all together. And you heard it click. So we still have probably a quarter to, or about 3/8 of an inch. So that's plenty. It's going to give us a lot more travel. That's probably, 2 1/4 inches of extra travel. And we'll do the same on the other end too. And that one should just snap off also. And we'll test it out. Yep. We still got probably 3/8 of an inch left of travel, so gives us plenty of room there, but it's going to, we'll probably gain a whole 5 inches of extra travel, which and go ahead and tighten this one back down to where that washer is even with that arrow. All right. So now the rail is ready to assemble. The circuit board and the lights and that sort of thing, that's the very last step you'll do to install. You'll have the rail already mounted and everything. Okay, so the opener we're taking down is a Chamberlain LiftMaster opener. It's got a strip gear. This can be replaced. The only bad thing about this one, it doesn't have the photo eyes, so for liability reasons, we're not going to change the gear out like you would normally. But first thing you'll do to take this down is unplug the operator. And then on this one, you've got your wall terminals over to your wall switch. And if this one also had photo eyes or the safety beams, it would be on some terminals back here. You would just unhook those and just leave them to the side, because most likely your wiring for your sensor eyes and your wall station are perfectly fine, unless for some reason they got shorted out. And then you will go down here to the other end. We're going to pull the pin on the end here so we can start taking it down. Okay, so here's the pin that holds the opener up to the header board. It had a cotter pin. I took it out, but if you have torsion springs like this, a lot of times you can pull the pin and set the bar up here while you're taking the motor head down. If you have extension springs that stretch alongside of the track, you can leave this pin in and drop the motor head, and you'll have plenty of clearance to set the motor head in the floor. But in this case, we're going to set it on top of the torsion bar. And typically the angle iron up here is going to be a 1/2 inch socket. You're going to loosen that. If you can, leave it in there so it holds itself up. You can go ahead and push it back in. And go ahead and take those out, and then you'll pull the bolts out. Usually what I do is I set it on the tray of my ladder, like that. And while it's rested on the torsion bar up there, then you'll come over and take it down. And in the box of your Sommer opener, there's a bag with all the hardware that you need. This is the header piece. This is what the rail attaches to. The rail slides in here, and then your pin goes through it. And then it's got 2 of these clips that slide on the ends of the rail to hold it in place. So first thing we need to do is mount this, and we'll have to take off the old LiftMaster mounting bracket. On the lags that are in here typically are 1/2 inch or they're 7/16. All right, so you're wanting to mount this at the same height as the other one. For your mounting bracket on the Sommer opener, you're going to take your carriage bolts and you're going to go from the inside and go through. And then it'll have a lock nut or a lock washer, and then you're going to put the nut on there. You'll take the other one and do the exact same thing. And then you're going to slide it onto the rail. And you're going to do it on the end that has the contact for the circuit board to slide on in the light. Because that's the end it's going to mount on. Okay, so now we're going to mount the opener to the header and then also to the ceiling. So you're going to take your pin to mount the front of the rail to the header, and then also your clips. You'll take your rail and you'll want a ladder back here behind you. Set the rail, if you've got torsion springs, set it on top of the torsion springs, and then set this end up on the ladder. Come back here. And go ahead and put one of the clips on this pin. That way it doesn't push all the way through. Then take your other retainer clip, clip it in place so that is secure now. Now you're going to have your angle iron. You need a cross piece here to go from your old angle iron if you were taking down an old opener. And then, like for this, I've already measured it, how far it is from the ceiling up front. And so I need 4-inch pieces of angle iron. So what I'm going to do is go ahead on this side mount here. Go ahead and take those nuts off and mount that back on there. Okay, and now you want to center this rail. This will still slide your mount up and down the rail so you can put it wherever you need it. You just want to make sure it's centered with your opener or with the door. You put your bolt through. And since this is going to be lighter weight compared to most opener installs, because you don't actually have a big heavy motor back here, this DC motor, the 3/4 horsepower, it's a lot lighter than your average opener. Go ahead and put the nut on here. Tighten everything down. All right, so now we can get the circuit board and the light and mount it back here. So as you can see, there's the slot here beside the power cord, and there's 2 metal tabs, and that actually will make contact with this, and it sends power down to the motor head. It slides over. You'll take this pin, and this is the lock piece right here sticking up, so it goes in last. Slides in, and make sure that this lock piece right here is in the up position. Then you'll take a small flathead screwdriver, and you'll turn it, and that locks it in place. All right, so now we're going to install the photo eyes, the safety sensors at the bottom of the door. First thing you're going to do is unroll this, which with this opener being German, they roll everything up different than we do. You grab the end and where the photo eye is, and you pull them both together because it's easy to get a tangled mess with this if you do it another way. Okay, and then you're going to take, you're going to mount your bracket, and you're going to mount it up like this. Your photo eye is going to mount on top of that. So I usually mount it right above the jamb bracket, the first one, and that's usually about the right height, usually about 8 to 12 inches off the ground. And then you're going to take, there's a bag that in the box with the photo eyes. It comes with the carriage bolt and a wing nut. You're going to slide that in the bottom of the photo eye and drop it in place. This will allow it to pivot, slide in and out. That way you can align them up if you need to. Okay, now for a staple gun, T25 staples, they're U-shaped so it doesn't pinch the wire. You want to give yourself a little slack there so it's not stretching the wiring. Staple that in place. If you already had photo eyes, you can just, and the wiring's still good, you can just cut it off and you can splice into it, and just be sure to electrical tape or use some wire nuts to seal it up to prevent corrosion. So you're going to run this over right in front, right over top of the rail, and just leave it hanging here. And you'll go wire the other side and leave it hanging here. And you're going to run these down the rail. One trick that you can do here is if you've got some duct tape or Gorilla Tape, you can duct tape it to the top to just hold them down and keep them out of the way. All right, so now we got both sets of wires for your photo eyes wired up. And they're stapled up above the opener rail. We're going to run them all the way back and just leave them kind of hanging. Like I said, you can use duct tape or something like that to tape them to the rail. But I'm going to tie them off either on the angle iron here, you can do that, or you can also, they give you enough room under in that rectangle place where I was showing you the rail slid on. There's enough room under there that you can put the wiring underneath of that, and it'll hold it tight so they don't just flop around. So that's what I'm going to do. So you're going to cut off the excess. Just be sure you leave yourself plenty. And also the wires on this tend to need to be kind of short. So there's a slot on the very top of the opener, and it slides down right here where the terminals. This cover, it just slides off back towards you. You'll run the wiring down through here, and then you'll go ahead and you will cut them off about that short, like leave about 2.5, 3 inches. And the good thing about these openers too, they're not they're non-polarized, so on the wiring, meaning you don't have to worry about your positive and the negative trying to keep track what's what, which makes it just a lot easier to install too. Over to the far left, there's terminal 6 and 5. So what you'll do is go ahead and get them started. Go ahead and put one on each bundle. Get them started one in terminal 5 and one in terminal 6. Do the same thing with the other bundle. Okay, what I like to do is just kind of put pressure on them and go ahead with your screwdriver. And on those orange tabs right here, you're going to press up on both of them while you're pushing up on the wire, and then let off with the screwdriver and it'll keep them pinched. So both of them are in. Take this excess wire that we had cut off, and we're going to slide it down. And then up here, cut off the old wire, because a lot of times that'll break off and stuff. Then take your other wire that was a scrap piece. You're going to splice into it. You're just going to twist them together really tight, so like an electrician would do on wiring. And if you've got wire nuts, or you can use electrical tape to tape it up. Okay, so now we're going to leave about a good 3 inches or so hanging out. We're going to splice or pull the jacketing off of your wiring. And this is going to go in terminals 3 and 4. So you can go ahead and get them started in the slots and just push up on those 2 terminals. And that's in. Okay, and you can test everything out by plugging your opener in. And down at the bottom, it'll take a second, but the light should come on for the photo eyes. All right, so now that we've wired up our photo eyes, the way these work, they pivot in the bracket. They can slide in and out, but they also can twist. So they're pretty sensitive on being aligned correctly. What you should have is a red light on one and a green light on the other. And if you notice I break the beam, it blinks. And if you look at the other one, the green light is also blinking also. So like they're really sensitive, so how you'll adjust them is the wing nut on the back. Best thing to do is to just slowly turn the wing nut and slide it in and out, and then move the, twist the eye clockwise or counterclockwise until you get a solid steady light. So what you're going to do for your arm, you're going to reattach that. So like I'm using the old mounting bracket, there's no reason to take this off and switch it out to the new one. It looks pretty much the same. Put your cotter pin back in. And in the bag of hardware, you'll have a longer bolt or a pin like this. You're going to mount it, you're going to run it through the opener in front of the motor there. Then put the retainer clip to hold it in place. Now you'll need to loosen the travel stops and just keep it loose. Move the motor. And you'll want some angle on you'll want a little bit of angle on the arm. You don't want it straight up and down, but it'll allow to get a good tight seal on the door. And take your two bolts. They've got nylock lock nuts on them so they don't come loose. And you'll take a 9/16 wrench and then a 9/16 socket. Okay, now with the door fully closed, you can take your stop and slide it forward until you hear it click. And that's where you want it to stop. So you'll lock it down in that spot by tightening the screw. And the Phillips head screws that they have for these are pretty big, so I prefer flat heads. It works better and seems to not strip out and that sort of thing. Now we'll raise the door. Loosen your limit adjuster and get the door so where it just is up where you can, if you were standing outside, you could see the bottom rubber from the outside. Now you'll adjust your stop the same way as you did the front. So it just clicked right there. Tighten it down. Now what you want to do is pull the cord, and it should lock it in place. It'll go maybe just an inch or so. The good thing about this opener too, if in an emergency, if you have to raise your door manually, you can disengage it and then raise the door, close it back, and pull the cord again, it'll lock it in place. It'll lock wherever you want it to. Just pull the cord again. So now we're going to test the opener out. Press the learn button on the back. There's two buttons. There's a reset button over here, and there's a learn button. Hit the learn button, and then you're going to press the remote button that you want to program. Okay, so now that when we hit the learn button and then press the remote button, that's to train the opener to the remote. And the first 2 cycles, the opener is learning how your door feels. So it's learning how hard to push and pull going down, and then also how hard to push and pull going up. So we need to run it down, up, down, and then back up. Alright, and the last thing we have to do is do your wall station, and then also getting this adjusted to the right height for your emergency release cord. Okay, so now we're going to switch out the old wall button to the new wall station. On this wall station, you have your up and down button, turn your light off and on, and also a vacation mode. If you hold it down, it'll basically disable the remote, so the remotes won't work anymore. That's good. So if you're out of town, you don't want anybody getting in your garage. It's a good way to do it instead of just unplugging the opener. Okay, so they've got 4 wires here. You only need 2 of them. I'm going to cut off the green and the yellow. We're just going to use the red and the black. Okay, we've got those cut off. We're going to use some excess wire because they didn't leave us any extra, so we can hook this other wall station up. It's a little bigger, so it's hard to get in there with a screwdriver. So we're just going to take some excess wire and we're going to splice into it. Okay, and then just trim off the excess. And then I like to use, this is liquid electrical tape. You can get it at Home Depot or Lowe's. And it works real good. It seals everything up, and it's like electrical tape, but it's waterproof and all that stuff. But it's a little messy at first, but it's cleaner in the end. It doesn't peel off and that sort of thing. Okay, now that you've got extra wire, you don't need that much extra, so and loosen the terminals on the back of the wall station. And hook them on the back and just snug them up. Don't over tighten them though, or it can cause a short in the board and that sort of thing on the back of this wall station. All right, and then take one of your screws, and the first one you're going to put in You don't want to tighten it all the way down because this cover, it's made to slide over, slide on like that. And then since this is in brick, we need to mark it and find out, we're gonna have to put, it comes with like a plastic insert. So now that we got it marked, we'll drill it out, and then we'll put one of these plastic inserts in for the screw anchor to go in. All right, so now we're going to test it to make sure it reverses properly. So what we'll do is stick a 2x4 underneath the garage door, and we're going to lower the door down onto the 2x4. It should hit it and reverse. As long as it reverses, it passes the test. And the cool thing about these openers, the way it works is it's a DC powered motor, so it's sensing the voltage. So anytime it senses that there's a spike in voltage, it's going to react, and it's going to stop and reverse and that sort of thing. So it's much safer than, let's say, a LiftMaster AC powered motor or a Genie AC powered motor. Instead of having all these manual adjustments, this thing adjusts itself, so it senses if anything changes on your garage door. All right, so we're gonna clean up this cord a little bit. We're gonna shorten it up because it's not needed. So we're gonna take a zip tie, tie it up just so it's a lot neater. All right, and then put the back cover on to cover up your wiring, and you are good to go. I hope you found this installation video helpful, and so when you're looking to buy a new opener, we hope you choose the Sommer Synoris 550 and get it from DIY Garage Door Parts.